ocean with an angry heart overflowing till it all goes dark. You keep trying to hide the scars, but I don't need you anymore. That's the best part. In between love and obsession, caught in the wreckage. Let me be. You are a prison. Why won't you listen? In the deep end, we hit a dead end. Every time we're swimming, you make sure we sink it. In the deep end, why do I dive in? Every time we sink it, down, down, down. In the deep end.
Good evening. My name's Grant. That was Deep End by Float, Fendi's Cisneros, and Lux Tides. I think that's how you pronounce that. It's a melodic dubstep release from NCS. I've included it in the link below, or the description box below. So if you want to listen to that kind of thing again, personally not for me, but not really too much else to do about it. So yep. And you can find that there. Yeah, again, so my name's Grant. I'm the Prime Minister of New Strathclyde. I'm also the host of River Valley Radio. And this week we do have. So I did say, episodes were gonna start coming weekly now instead of bi-weekly. So these week, the ones in between sort of the interviews and um the Balderdash campaign, this will just be me reading the Lord of the Rings, just get content out there. Speaking of the Lord of the Rings, we're just gonna pick up where we left off last time. So going on was not altogether easy. They had packs to carry, and the bushes and brambles were reluctant to let them through. They were cut off from the wind by the ridge behind, and the air was still and stuffy. When they forced their way at last into more open ground, they were hot and tired and very scratched. They were also no longer certain of the direction in which they were going. The banks of the stream sank as it reached the levels and became broader and shallower, wandering off towards the Marish and the river. "Why, this is Stockbrook," said Pippin. "If we're going to try and get back on to our course, we must cross at once and bear right." They waded the stream and hurried over a wide open space, rush-grown and treeless on the farther side. Beyond that they came again to a belt of trees, tall oaks for the most part, with here and there an elm tree or an ash. The ground was fairly level, and there was little undergrowth, but the trees were too close for them to see far ahead. The leaves blew upwards, and sudden gusts of wind and spots of rain began to fall from the overcast sky. Then the wind died away, and the rain came streaming down, They trudged along as fast as they could, over patches of grass and through the thick drifts of old leaves. And all about them the rain pattered and trickled. They did not talk, but kept glancing back and from side to side. After half an hour, Pippin said, "Oh, we've not turned too much towards the south, and are not walking longwise through this wood. It's not a very broad belt. I should have said no more than a mile at the widest, and we ought to have been through it by now." "It's no good our starting to go in zigzags," said Frodo. "That won't mend matters. Let us keep on as we're going. I'm not sure that I want to come out into the open yet." They went on for perhaps another couple of miles. Then the sun gleamed out of ragged clouds again, and the rain lessened. It was now past midday, and they felt it was high time for lunch. They halted under an elm tree. Its leaves, though fast turning yellow, were still thick, and the ground at its feet was fairly dry and sheltered. When they came to make their meal, they found that the elves had filled their bottles with a clear drink, pale golden in colour. It had the scent of honey made of many flowers, and was wonderfully refreshing. Very soon they were laughing and snapping their fingers at rain, and at black riders. The last few miles they felt would soon be behind them. Frodo propped his back against the tree trunk and closed his eyes. Sam and Pippin sat near, and they began to hum, and then to sing softly. "Ho, ho, ho, to the bottle I go, to heal my heart and drown my woe. Rain may fall and wind may blow, and many miles be still to go. But under a tall tree I will lie, and let the clouds go sailing by." "Ho, ho, ho!" they began again louder. They stopped short suddenly. Frodo sprang to his feet. A long drawn wail came from down the wind, like the cry of some evil and lonely creature. It rose and fell, and ended on a high piercing note. Even as they sat and stood as if suddenly frozen, it was answered by another cry, fainter and further off, but no less chilling to the blood. There was then a silence, broken only by the sound of the wind in the leaves. "And what do you think that was?" Pippin asked at last, trying to speak lightly, but quavering a little. "If it was a bird, it was one that I'd never heard in the Shire before." "It was not bird or beast," said Frodo. "It was a call or a signal. There there were words in that cry, though I could not catch them, but no hobbit has such a voice. No more it said about it. They were all thinking of the riders, but no one spoke of them. They were now reluctant either to stay or go on, but sooner or later to get across they had got to get across the open country to the ferry, and it was best to go sooner, and at daylight in a few moments they had shouldered their packs again and were off. Before long the wood came to a sudden end. Wide grasslands stretched before them. They now sat they now saw that they had, in fact, turned too much to the south. Away over the flats they could glimpse the low hill of Bucklebury across the river, but it was now to the left. Creeping cautiously out from the edge of the trees, they set off across the open as quickly as they could. At first they felt afraid. Away from the shelter of the wood, far back behind them stood the high place where they had breakfasted. Frodo half expected to see the small distant figure of a horseman on the ridge, dark against the sky, but there was no sign of one. The sun, escaping from the breaking clouds as it sank towards the hills they had left, was now shining brightly again. Their fear left them, though they still felt uneasy. But the land became steadily more tame and well ordered. Soon they came into well tended fields and meadows. There were hedges and gates and dykes for drainage. Everything seemed quiet and peaceful, just an ordinary corner of the Shire. Their spirits rose with every step. The line of the river grew nearer, and the black riders began to seem like phantoms of the woods, now felt far behind. They passed along the edge of a huge turnip field and came to a stout gate. Beyond it a rutted lane ran below well laid hedges towards a distant clump of trees. Pippin stopped. "Do I know these fields and this gate?" he said. "This is Bamfurlong, old Farmer Maggot's land. That's his farm away there in the trees." "One trouble after another," said Frodo, looking nearly as much alarmed as if Pippin had declared the lane was the slot leading to a dragon's den. The others looked at him in surprise. "What's wrong with old Maggot?" asked Pippin. "He's a good friend to all the Brandybucks. Of course, he's a terror to trespassers and keeps ferocious dogs. But after all, folk down here are near the border and have to be more on their guard." "I know," said Frodo. "But all the same," he added with a shamefaced laugh, "I'm terrified of him and his dogs. I've avoided his farm for years and years. He caught me several times trespassing." Hold on just a second, I've sort of lost my place. Trespassing after mushrooms. When I was a youngster at Brandy Hall, on the last occasion he beat me, and then he took me and showed me to his dogs. "See, lads," he said, "next time this young varmint sets foot in my land, you can eat him. Now see him off." They chased me all the way to the ferry. I've never got over the fright, though I dare say the beasts knew their business and would not really have touched me." Pippin laughed. "Well, it's time you made it up, especially if you're coming back to live in Buckland. Old Maggot is really a stout fellow, if you leave his mushrooms alone. Let's get into the lane, and then we shan't be trespassing. If we meet him, I'll do the talking. He's a friend of Mary's, and I used to come here with him a good deal at one time." They went along the lane until they saw the thatched roofs of a large house and farm buildings peeping out among the trees ahead. The Maggots and the Puddiefoots of stock, and most of the inhabitants of the Marish were house dwellers, and this farm was stoutly built of brick and had a high wall all round it. There was a wide wooden gate opening out of the wall into the lane. Suddenly, as they drew near, a terrific baying and barking broke out, and a loud voice was heard shouting, "Grip! Fang! Wolf! Come on, lads!" Frodo and Sam stopped dead, but Pippin walked on a few paces. The gate opened, and three huge dogs came pelting out into the lane and dashed towards the travellers, barking fiercely. They took no notice of Pippin, but Sam shrank against the wall, while the two wolfish-looking dogs sniffed at him suspiciously and snarled if he moved. The largest and most ferocious of the three halted in front of Frodo, bristling and growling. Through the gate there now appeared a broad, thick-set hobbit with a round red face. "Hallo, hallo, and who may you be, and what may you be wanting?" he asked. "Good afternoon, Mr. Maggot," said Pippin. The farmer looked at him closely. "Well, if it isn't Master Pippin, Mr. Peregrine Took, I should say," he cried, changing from a scowl to a grin. "It's a long time since I saw you round here. It's lucky for you that I know you. I was just going out to set my dogs on any strangers. There are some funny things going on today. Of course, we do get queer folk wandering in these parts at times." "Too near the river," he said, shaking his head. "But this fellow was the most outlandish I've ever set eyes on. He won't cross my land without leave a second time, not if I can stop it." "What fellow do you mean?" asked Pippin. "Then you haven't seen him," said the farmer. "He went up the lane towards the causeway not a long while back. He was a funny customer and asking funny questions, but perhaps you'll come along inside and we'll pass the news more comfortable. If I drop a good ale on tap, if you and your friends are willing, Mr. Took." It seemed plain that the farmer would tell him more, if allowed to do it again in his own time and fashion, so they all accepted the invitation. "What about the dogs?" asked Frodo anxiously. The farmer laughed. "They won't harm you, not unless I tell them." Here, Grip, Fang, heel, he cried. Heel, Wolf! To the relief of Frodo and Sam, the dogs walked away and let them go free. Pippin introduced the other two to the farmer. Mr. Frodo Baggins, he said. You may not remember him, but he used to live at Brandy Hall. At the name of Baggins, the farmer started and gave Frodo a sharp glance. For a moment, Frodo thought that the memory of stolen mushrooms had been aroused, and that the dogs would be told to see him off. But Farmer Maggot took him by the arm. Well, if that isn't queerer than ever, he exclaimed. Mr. Baggins, is it? Come inside. We must have a talk. They went into the farmer's kitchen and sat by the wide fireplace. Mrs. Maggot brought out beer in a huge jug and filled four large mugs. It was a good brew, and Pippin found himself more than compensated for missing the golden perch. Sam sipped his beer suspiciously. He had a natural mistrust of the inhabitants of other parts of the Shire, and also he was not disposed to be quick friends with anyone who had beaten his master, however long ago. After a few remarks about the weather and the agricultural prospects, which were no worse than usual, Farmer Maggot put down his mug and looked at them all in turn. Now, Mr. Peregrine, he said, where might you be coming from, and where might you be going to? Were you coming to visit me? For if so, you'd gone past my gate without my seeing you. Well, no, answered Pippin. To tell you the truth, since you've guessed it, we got into the lane from the other end. We'd come over your fields, but that was quite by accident. We lost our way in the woods back near Wood Hall, trying to take a short cut to the ferry. If you were in a hurry, the road would have served you better, said the farmer. But I wasn't worrying about that. You've leave to walk over my land, if you have a mind, Mr. Peregrine. And you, Mr. Baggins, though I dare say you still like mushrooms, he laughed. Ah, yes, I recognise the name. I recollect the time when young Frodo Baggins was one of the worst young rascals of Buckland. But it wasn't mushrooms I was thinking of. I just heard the name Baggins before you turned up. What do you think that funny customer asked me? They waited anxiously for him to go on. Well, the farmer continued, approaching his point of slow relish. He came riding on a big black horse in at the gate, which happened to be open, and right up to my door. All black he was himself too, and cloaked and hooded up as if he did not want to be known. Now what in the Shire can he want? I thought to myself. We don't see many of the big folk over the border, and anyway, I'd never heard of any like this black fellow. Good day to you, I says, going out to him. This lane don't lead anywhere. Wherever you may be going, your quickest way will be back to the road. I didn't like the looks of him, and when Grip came out, he took one sniff and let out a yelp as if he had been stung. He put down his tail and bolted off howling. The black fellow sat quite still. I come from yonder, he said, slow and stiff like, pointing back west over my fields, if you please. Have you seen Baggins? He asked in a queer voice, and bent down towards me. I could not see any face, for his hood fell down so low, and I felt a sort of shiver down my back, but did not see why he should come riding over my land so bold. Be off, I said. There are no Bagginses here. You're in the wrong part of the Shire. You'd better go back west to Hobbiton. But you can go by road this time. Baggins has left, he answered in a whisper. He's coming. He's not far away. I wish to find him. If he passes, will you tell me? I will come back with gold. No, you won't, I said. You'll go back where you belong. Double quick. I give you 1 minute before I call my dogs. He gave a sort of hiss. It might have been laughing, and it might not. Then he spurred his great horse right at me, and I jumped out of the way only just in time. I called the dogs, but he swung off and rode through the gate and up the lane towards the causeway like a bolt of thunder. What do you think? What do you think of that? Frodo sat for a moment looking at the fire, but his only thought was how on earth would they reach the ferry? I don't know what to think, he said at last. Then I'll tell you what to think, said Maggot. You should never have gone mixing yourself up with the Hobbiton folk, Mr. Frodo. Folk are queer up there. Sam stirred in his chair and looked at the farmer with an unfriendly eye. But you were always a reckless lad. When I heard you'd left the Brandybucks and gone off to that old Mr. Bilbo, I said that you were going to find trouble. Mark my words, this all comes of those strange doings of Mr. Bilbo's. His money was got in some strange fashion in foreign parts, they say. Maybe there is some that want to know what has become of the gold and jewels that he buried in the hill of Hobbiton, as I hear. Frodo said nothing. The shrewd guesses of the farmer were rather disconcerting. Well, Mr. Frodo, Maggot went on, I'm glad that you've had the sense to come back to Buckland. My advice is stay there and don't get mixed up with these outlandish folk. You'll have friends in these parts. If any of these black fellows come after you again, I'll deal with them. I'll say you're dead, or have left the Shire, or anything you like, and that might be true enough. For as like as not, it is old Mister Bilbo they want news of. Maybe you're right, said Frodo, avoiding the farmer's eye and staring at the fire. Maggot looked at him thoughtfully. Well, I see you have ideas of your own, he said. It is, a, it is as plain as my nose that no accident brought you and that rider here on the same afternoon. Maybe my news was no great news to you, after all. I'm not asking you to tell me anything you have a mind to keep to yourself. But I see you're in some kind of trouble. Perhaps you're thinking it won't be too easy to get to the ferry without being caught. I was thinking so, said Frodo. But we've got to try and get there, and it won't be done by sitting and thinking. So I'm afraid we must be going. Thank you very much indeed for your kindness. I've been in terror of you and your dogs for over 30 years, Farmer Maggot, though you may laugh to hear it. It's a pity, for I've missed a good friend, and now I'm sorry to leave so soon. But I'll come back, perhaps, one day, if I get a chance. You'll be welcome when you come, said Maggot. But now I've a notion. It's near sundown already, and we're going to have our supper, for we mostly go to bed soon after the sun. If you and Mr. Peregrine and all could stay and have a bite with us, we would be pleased. And so should we, said Frodo, but we must be going at once, I'm afraid. Even now it will be dark before we can reach the ferry. Ah, but wait a minute. I was going to say, after a bit of supper, I'll get out a small wagon and I'll drive you all to the ferry. That will save you a good step, and it might also save you the trouble of another sort. Frodo now accepted the invitation gratefully, to the relief of Pippin and Sam. The sun was already behind the western hills, and the light was failing. Two of Maggot's sons and his three daughters came in, with a generous supper was laid on the table. The kitchen was lit with candles, and the fire was mended. Mrs. Maggot bustled in and out. One or two other hobbits belonging to the farm household came in. In a short while 14 sat down to eat. There was beer in plenty, and a mighty dish of mushrooms and bacon, besides much other solid farmhouse fare. The dogs laid by the fire and gnawed rinds and cracked bones. When they had finished, the farmer and his sons went out with a lantern and got the wagon ready. It was dark in the yard when the guests came out. They threw their packs on board and climbed in. The farmer sat in the driving seat and whipped up his two stout ponies. His wife stood in the light of the open door. You be careful yourself, Maggot, she called. Don't go arguing with any foreigners, and come straight back. I will, said he, and drove out of the gate. There was now no breath of wind stirring. The night was still and quiet, and a chill was in the air. They went without lights and took it slowly. After a mile or two, the lane came to an end, crossing a deep dike and climbing a short slope up onto the high banked causeway. Maggot got down and took a good look either way, north and south, but nothing could be seen in the darkness, and there was not a sound in the still air. Thin strands of river mist were hanging above the dikes and crawling over the fields. It's going to be thick, said Maggot, but I'll not light my lanterns till I turn for home. We'll hear anything on the road long before we meet it tonight. It was 5 miles or more from Maggot's Lane to the ferry, The hobbits wrapped themselves up, but their ears were strained for any sounds above the creak of the wheels and the slow clop of the ponies' hoofs. The wagon seemed slower than a snail to Frodo. Beside him Pippin was nodding towards sleep, but Sam was staring forwards into the rising fog. They reached the entrance to the fairy lane at last. It was marked by two tall white posts that suddenly loomed up on the right. Farmer Maggot drew in his ponies, and the wagon creaked to a halt. They were just beginning to scramble out when suddenly they heard what they had all been dreading: hoofs on the road ahead. The sound was coming towards them. Maggot jumped down and stood holding the ponies' heads and peering forward into the gloom. Clip, clop, clip, clop, came the approaching rider. The fall of the hoofs sounded loud in the still, foggy air. "You'd better be hidden, Mr. Frodo," said Sam anxiously. "You get down in the wagon and cover up with blankets, and we'll send this rider to the rightabouts." You climbed out and went to the farmer's side. Black riders would have to ride over him to get near the wagon. Clop, 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 clop. The rider was nearly on them. "Hello there!" called Farmer Maggot. The advancing hoofs stopped short. They thought they could dimly guess a dark cloaked shape in the mist, a yard or two ahead. "Now then," said the farmer, throwing his reins to Sam and striding forward, "don't you come a step nearer. What do you want, and where are you going?" "I want Mr. Baggins. Have you seen him?" said a muffled voice. But the voice was the voice of Mary Brandybuck. A dark lantern was uncovered, and its light fell on the astonished face of the farmer. "Mr. Mary!" he cried. "Yes, of course. Who did you think it was?" said Mary, coming forward. As he came out of the mist and their fears subsided, he seemed suddenly to diminish to ordinary hobbit size. He was riding a pony, and a scarf was swathed round his neck and over his chin to keep out the fog. Frodo sprang out of the wagon to greet him. "So there you are at last," said Mary. "I was beginning to wonder if you would turn up at all today, and I was just going back to supper. When it grew foggy, I came across and rode up towards Stock to see if you had fallen in any ditches, but I'm blessed if I know which way you have come. Where did you find him, Mr. Maggot? In your duck pond?" "No, I caught him trespassing," said the farmer, "and nearly set my dogs on him. But they'll tell you all the story, I've no doubt. Now, if you'll excuse me, Mr. Mary, and Mr. Frodo, and all, I'd best be turning for home. Mrs. Maggot will be worriting with the night getting thick." He backed the wagon into the lane and turned it. "Well, good night to you all," he said. "It's been a queer day, and no mistake, but all's well as ends well, though perhaps we should not say that until we reach our own doors. I'll not deny that. I'll be glad now when I do." He lit his lanterns and got up. Suddenly he produced a large basket from under the seat. "I was nearly forgetting," he said. "Mrs. Maggot put this up for Mr. Baggins, with her compliments." He handed it down and moved off, followed by a chorus of thanks and good nights. They watched the pale rings of light round his lanterns as they dwindled into the foggy night. Suddenly Frodo laughed. From the covered basket he held, the scent of mushrooms was rising. Chapter 5. A Conspiracy Unmasked. "Now we'd better get home ourselves," said Mary. "There's something funny about all this, I see, but it must wait till we get in." They turned down the fairy lane, which was straight and well kept, and edged with large whitewashed stones. In 100 yards or so it brought them to the river bank, where there was a broad wooden landing stage. A large flat ferry boat was moored beside it. The white bollards near the water's edge glimmered in the light of two lamps on high posts. Behind them the mists and the flat fields were now above the hedges, but the water before them was dark, with only a few curling wisps, like steam, among the reeds and by the bank. There seemed to be less fog on the farther side. Mary led the pony over a gangway onto the ferry, and the others followed Mary, and the others followed. Mary then pushed slowly off with a long pole. The brandy wine flowed slow and broad before them. On the other side the bank was steep, and up it a winding path climbed from the farther landing. Lamps were twinkling there. Behind loomed up the Buck Hill, and out of it, through stray shrouds of mist, shone many round windows, yellow and red. They were the windows of Brandy Hall, the ancient home of the Brandybucks. Long ago, Gorindad Oldbuck, head of the Oldbuck family, one of the oldest in the Marish, or indeed in the Shire, had crossed the river, which was the original boundary of the land eastwards. He built and excavated Brandy Hall, changed his name to Brandybuck, and settled down to become master of what was virtually a small independent country. His family grew and grew, and after his days continued to grow, until Brandy Hall occupied the whole of the low hill, and had three large front doors, many side doors, and about 100 windows. The Brandybucks and their numerous dependents then began to burrow, and later to build, all round about. That was the origin of Buckland, a thickly inhabited strip between the river and the old forest, a sort of colony from the Shire. Its chief village was Bucklebury, clustering in the banks and slopes behind Brandy Hall. The people in the Marish were friendly with the Bucklanders, and the authority of the master of the hall, as head of the Brandybuck family was called, was still acknowledged by the farmers between Stock and Rushy. But most of the folk of the old shire regarded the Bucklanders as peculiar, half foreigners as it were. Though as a matter of fact they were not very different from the other hobbits of the Four Farthings, except in one point: they found they were fond of boats, and some of them could swim. Their land was originally unprotected from the east, but on that side they had built a hedge. The high hay had been planted many generations ago, and was now thick and tall, for it was constantly tended. It ran all the way from Brandywine Bridge, in a big loop curving away from the river to Hayes End, where the Withywindle flowed out of the forest into the Brandywine, well over 20 miles from end to end. But of course it was not a complete protection. The forest drew close to the hedges in many places. The Bucklanders kept their doors locked after dark, and that was also not usual in the Shire. The ferry boat moved slowly across the water. The Buckland shore drew nearer. Sam was the only member of the party who had not been over the river before. He had a strange feeling as the slow gurgling stream slipped by. His old life lay behind in the mists. Dark adventure lay in front. He scratched his head, and for a moment had a passing with that Mr. Frodo could have gone on living quietly at Bag End. The four hobbits stepped off the ferry. Merry was tying it up, and Pippin was already leading the pony up the path, when Sam, who had been looking back as if to take farewell of the Shire, said in a hoarse voice, "Look back, Mr. Frodo. Do you see anything?" On the far stage, under the distant lamps, they could just make out a figure. It looked like a dark black bundle left behind, but as they looked it seemed to move and sway this way and that, as if searching the ground. It then crawled, or went crouching back into the gloom beyond the lamps. "What in the Shire is that?" exclaimed Merry. "Something that's following us," said Frodo. "But don't ask any more now. Let's get away at once." They hurried up the path to the top of the bank, but when they looked back the far shore was shrouded in mist, and nothing could be seen. "Thank goodness you don't keep any boats on the west bank," said Frodo. "Can horses cross the river?" "They can go 10 miles north to Brandywine Bridge, or they might swim," answered Mary, "though I've never heard of any horse swimming in the Brandywine. But what have horses to do with it? I'll tell you later. Let's get indoors, and then we can talk." "All right. You and Pippin know your way, so I'll just ride on and tell Fatty Bulger that you're coming. We'll see about supper and things." "We had our supper early with Farmer Maggot," said Frodo, "but we could do with another." "You shall have it. Give me the basket, said Mary, and rode ahead into the darkness. It was some distance from the Brandywine to Frodo's new house at Crick Hollow. They passed Buck Hill and Brandy Hill on the left, and on the outskirts of Bucklebury struck the main road of Buckland that ran south from the bridge. Half a mile northward along this way, along this they came to a lane opening on the right. This they followed for a couple of miles as it climbed up and down into the country. At last they came to a narrow gate and a thick hedge. Nothing could be seen of the house in the dark. It stood back from the lane in the middle of a wide circle of lawn, surrounded by a belt of low trees inside the outer hedge. Frodo had chosen it because it stood an out of the way corner of the country, and there was no other dwellings close by. You could get in and out without being noticed. It had been built a long while before the Brandybucks, for the use of guests or members of the family that wished to escape from the crowded life of Brandy Hall for a time. It was an old-fashioned countrified house, as much like a hobbit hole as possible. It was long and low, and no upper story, and it had a roof of turf round the windows and a large round door. As they walked up the green path from the gate, no light was visible. The windows were dark and shuttered. Frodo knocked on the door, and Fatty Bulger opened it. A friendly light streamed out. They slipped in quickly and shut themselves and the light inside. They were in a wide hall with doors on either side. In front of them, a passage ran back down the middle of the house. Well, what do you think of it? Asked Mary, coming up the passage. You've done our best in a short time to make it look like a home. After all, Fatty and I could only got here with the last cartload yesterday. Frodo looked round. It did look like home. Many of his own favourite things, or Bilbo's things, they reminded him sharply of him in their new setting, were arranged as neatly as possible as they had been at Bag End. It was a pleasant, comfortable, welcoming place, and he found himself wishing that he was really coming here to settle down in quiet retirement. It seemed unfair to have put his friends to all this trouble, and he wondered again how he was going to break the news to them that he must leave them so soon. Indeed, at once, yet that would have to be done. That would have to be done that very night before they all went to bed. It's delightful, he said with an effort. I hardly feel like I've moved at all. The travellers hung up their cloaks and piled their packs on the floor. Mary led them down the passage and threw open a door at the far end. Firelight came out of a puff of steam. A bath! Cried Pippin. Oh, blessed Meriadoc! Which order shall we go in? Said Frodo. Eldest first or quickest first? You'll be last either way, Master Peregrine. Trust me to arrange things better than that, said Mary. We can't begin life at Crick Hollow with a quarrel over baths. In that room there are 3 tubs and a copper full of boiling water. There are also towels, mats, and soap. Get inside and be quick. Mary and Fatty went into the kitchen on the other side of the passage and busied themselves with a final preparation for a late supper. Snatches of competing songs came from the bathroom, mixed with the sound of splashing and wallowing. The voice of Pippin was suddenly lifted up by one of the others, and Bilbo's favourite bath songs. Sing hey for the bath at close of day that washes the weary mud away. Alone is he that will not sing. O water hot is a noble thing. Oh, sweet is the sound of falling rain, and the brook that leaps from hill to plain. But better than rain or rippling streams is water hot that smokes and steams. Oh, water cold may pour at need down a thirsty throat and be glad indeed. But better is beer if drink we lack, and water hot poured down the back. Oh, water is fair that leaps on high, and a fountain white beneath the sky. But never did fountain sound so sweet as splashing hot water with my feet. There was a terrific splash, and a shout of "Whoa!" from Frodo. It appeared that a lot of Pippin's baths had imitated a fountain and leapt on high. Merry went to the door. "What about supper? And beer in the throat?" he called. Frodo came out drying his hair. "There's so much water in the air that I'm coming into the kitchen to finish," he said. "Fox," said Merry, looking in. The stone floor was swimming. "Yet ought to mop all that up before you get anything to eat, Peregrine," he said. "Hurry up, or we shan't wait for you." They had supper in the kitchen on a table near the fire. "I suppose you three won't want mushrooms again," said Fredgar, without much hope. "Yes, we shall," called Pippin. "They're mine," said Frodo. "Given to me by Mrs. Maggot, a queen among farmers' wives. Take your greedy hands away, and I'll serve them." Hobbits have a passion for mushrooms, surpassing even the greediest likings of big people, a fact which partly explains young Frodo's long expeditions to the renowned fields of the Marish and the wrath of the injured Maggot. On this occasion there was plenty for all, even according to Hobbit standards. There were also many other things to follow, and when they had finished, even Fatty Bulger heaved a sigh of content. They pushed back the table and drew chairs round the fire. "We'll clear up later," said Merry. "Now tell me all about it. I guess that you've been having adventures, which was not quite fair. What was the matter with old Maggot, and why he spoke to me, and not sorry, which was not quite fair without me. I want a full account. Most of all, I want to know what was the matter with old Maggot, and why he spoke to me like that. He sounded almost as if he was scared, if that's possible." "We've all been scared," said Pippin, after a pause in which Frodo stared at the fire and did not speak. "You would have been too if you'd been chased for 2 days by black riders." "And what are they?" "Black figures riding on horses," answered Pippin. "If Frodo won't talk, I'll tell you the whole tale from the beginning." He then gave a full account of their journey from the time that they had left Hobbiton. Sam gave various supporting nods and exclamations. Frodo remained silent. "I should think that you were making it all up," said Merry. "If I had not seen the black shape on the landing stage, and heard the queer sound in Maggot's voice. What do you think of it all, Frodo?" "Cousin Frodo has been very close," said Pippin, "but the time has come for him to open out. So far as we have been given nothing more to go on than Farmer Maggot's guess that it has something to do with old Bilbo's treasure." "That was only a guess," said Frodo hastily. "Maggot does not know anything." "Old Maggot is a shrewd fellow," said Merry. "A lot on behind his round face that does not come out in his talk. I've heard that he used to go out into the old forest at one time, and he has the reputation of knowing a good many strange things. But you can at least tell us, Frodo, whether you think his guess good or bad." "I think," answered Frodo slowly, "that it was a good guess, as far as it goes. There is a connection with Bilbo's old treasures, and the riders are looking, or perhaps one ought to say searching for him, or for me. I also fear, if you want to know, that it is no joke at all, and that I am not safe here or anywhere else." He looked round at the windows and walls, as if he was afraid they would suddenly give way. The others looked at him in silence, and exchanged meaning glances amongst themselves. "It's coming out in a minute," whispered whispered Pippin to Merry. Merry nodded. "Well," said Frodo at last, sitting up and straightening his back, as if he had made a decision, "I can't keep it dark any longer. I've got something to tell you all, but I don't know quite how to begin." "I think I could help you," said Mirren quietly, "by telling you some of it myself." "What do you mean?" said Frodo, looking at him anxiously. "Just this, my dear old Frodo. You are miserable because you don't know how to say goodbye. You meant to leave the Shire, of course, but danger has come on you sooner than you expected, and now you're making up your mind to go at once, and you don't want to. We are very sorry for you." Frodo opened his mouth and shut it again. His look of surprise was so comical that they laughed. Dear old Frodo, said Pippin, did you really think you'd thrown dust in all our eyes? You've not been nearly careful or clever enough for that. You've obviously been planning to go and saying farewell to all your haunts all this all this year since April. We've constantly heard you muttering, "Shall I ever look down into that valley again, I wonder?" and things like that, and pretending that you'd come to the end of your money, and actually selling your beloved bag end to those Sackville Bagginses, and all those close talks with Gandalf. Good heavens, said Frodo. I thought I'd been both careful and clever. I don't know what Gandalf would say. Is all the Shire discussing my departure then? Oh no, said Merry. Don't worry about that. The secret won't keep for long, of course, but at present it is, I think, only known to us conspirators. After all, you must remember that we know you well, and are often with you. We can usually guess what you're thinking. I knew Bilbo too, to tell you the truth. I've been watching you rather closely ever since you left. I thought you would go after him sooner or later. Indeed, I expected you to go sooner, and lately we've been very anxious. We've been terrified that you might give us the slip and go off suddenly, all on your own like he did. Ever since this spring, we've kept our eyes open and done a good deal of planning on our own account. You're not going to escape so easily. But I must go, said Frodo. It cannot be helped, dear friends. It is wretched for us all, but it is no use your trying to keep me. Since you have guessed so much, please help me and do not hinder me. You do not understand, said Pippin. You must go, and therefore we must too. Merry and I are coming with you. Sam is an excellent fellow and would jump down a dragon's throat to save you, if he did not trip over his own feet. But you will need more than one companion in your dangerous adventure. My dear and most beloved hobbits, said Frodo, deeply moved. But I could not allow it. I decided that long ago, too. You speak of danger, but you do not understand. There is no treasure hunt, no there and back journey. I'm flying from deadly peril into deadly peril. Of course we understand, said Mary firmly. That is why we've decided to come. We know the ring is no laughing matter, but we are going to do our best to help you against the enemy. The ring, said Frodo, now completely amazed. Yes, the ring, said Mary. My dear old hobbit, you don't allow for such inquisitiveness of friends. I have known about the existence of the ring for years, before Bilbo went away, in fact, but since he obviously regarded it as secret, I kept the knowledge in my head until we formed our conspiracy. I did not know Bilbo, of course, as well as I know you. I was too young, and he was also more careful, but he was not careful enough. If you want to know how I first found out, I will tell you. Go on, said Frodo faintly. It was the Sackville Bagginses that were his downfall, as you might expect. One day a year before the party, I happened to be walking along the road when I saw Bilbo ahead. Suddenly in the distance, the SBs appeared, coming towards us. Bilbo slowed down, and then, hey presto, he vanished. I was so startled that I hardly had the wits to hide myself in a more ordinary fashion, but I got through the hedge and walked along the field inside. I was peeping through into the road, and after the SBs had passed, and was looking straight at Bilbo when he suddenly reappeared. I caught a glint of gold as he put something back in his trouser pocket. After that, I kept my eyes open. In fact, I confess that I spied, but you must admit that it was very intriguing, and I was only in my teens. I must be the only one in the Shire, besides you, Frodo, that has ever seen the old fellow's secret book. You've read his book? Cried Frodo. Good heavens above! Is nothing safe? Not too safe, I should say, Mary, but I've only had one rapid glance, and that was difficult to get. He never left the book about. I wonder what became of it. I should like another book. Have you got it, Frodo? No, it was not a bag end. You must have taken it away. Well, as I was saying, Mary proceeded, I kept my knowledge to myself till this spring, when things got serious. Then we formed our conspiracy, and as we were serious too, and meant business, we have not been too scrupulous. You're not a very easy nut to crack, and Gandalf is worse. But if you want to be introduced to our chief investigator, I can produce him." "Where is he?" said Frodo, looking round as if he expected a masked and sinister figure to come out of a cupboard. "Step forward, Sam," said Merry, and Sam stood up with a face scarlet to the ears. He's our collector of information, and he collected a lot, I can tell you, before he was finally caught, after which I may say he seemed to regard himself as on parole and dried up. "Sam!" cried Frodo, feeling that amazement could go no further, and quite unable to decide whether he felt angry, amused, relieved, or merely foolish. "Yes, sir," said Sam. "Begging your pardon, sir, but I meant no wrong to you, Mr. Frodo, nor to Mr. Gandalf, for that matter. He has some sense, mind you, and when you said go alone, he said no, take someone, take someone as you can trust." "But it does not seem that I can trust anyone," said Frodo. Sam looked at him unhappily. "It all depends on what you want," put in Merry. "You can trust us to stick to you through thick and thin, to the bitter end, and you can trust us to keep any secret of yours closer than you keep it yourself. But you cannot trust us to let you face trouble alone and go off without a word. We are your friends, Frodo. Anyway, there it is. We know most of what Gandalf has told you. We know a good deal about the ring. We are horribly afraid, but we are coming with you, following you like the hounds. After all, sir," added Sam, "you ought to take the elves' advice. Gilder said you should take them as was willing, and you can't deny it." "I don't deny it," said Frodo, looking at Sam, who was now grinning. "I don't deny it, but I'll never believe you're sleeping again, whether you snore or not. I shall kick you hard to make sure. You're a set of deceitful scoundrels," he said, turning to the others. "But bless you," he laughed, getting up and waving his arms, "I give in, and I will take Gilder's advice. If the dangers were not so dark, I should dance for joy. Even so, I cannot help feeling happy. Happier than I've felt for a long time. I had dreaded this evening. Good, that's settled. Three cheers for Captain Frodo and company," they shouted, and danced round him. Merry and Pippin began a song, which they had apparently got ready for the occasion. It was made on the model of the dwarf song that started Bilbo on his adventure long ago, and went to the same tune. "Farewell we call to hearth and hall, though wind may blow and rain may fall. We must away ere break of day, for over wood and mountain tall, to Rivendell where elves yet dwell, and glades beneath the misty fell. Through moor and waste we ride in haste, and whiter than we cannot tell. With foes ahead, behind us dread, beneath the sky shall be our bed, until at last our toil be past, our journey done, our errand sped. We must away, we must away, we ride before the break of day." "Very good," said Frodo. "But in that case there are a lot of things to do before we go to bed. Under a roof for tonight at any rate." "Oh, that was poetry," said Pippin. "Do you really mean to start before the break of day?" "I don't know," answered Frodo. "I fear those black riders, and to which it is known I was going, and I'm sorry. I fear those black riders, and I'm sure it is unsafe to stay in one place long, especially in a place to which it is known I was going. Also, Gilder advised me not to wait, but I should very much like to see Gandalf. I could see that even Gilder was disturbed when he heard that Gandalf had never appeared. It really depends on two things. How soon could the riders get to Bucklebury, and how soon could we get off? It will take a good deal of preparation." "The answer to the second question," said Merry, "is that we could get off in an hour. I've prepared practically everything. There are 5 ponies in a stable across the fields. Stores and tackle are all packed, except for a few extra clothes and the perishable food." "It seems to have been very efficient conspiracy," said Frodo. But what about the Black Riders? Would it be safe to wait 1 day for Gandalf? That all depends on what you think the Riders would do. If they found you here, answered Mr. Merry, they could have reached here by now, of course, if they were not stopped at the North Gate, where the hedge runs down to the river bank, just this side of the bridge. The gate guards would not let them through by night, though they might break through. Even in the daylight, they would try to keep them out, I think. At any rate, until they got the message through to the master of the hall, for they would not like the look of the riders, and would certainly be frightened by them. But of course, Buckland cannot resist a determined attack for long, and it is possible that in the morning even a black rider that rode up and asked for Mr. Baggins would be let through. It is pretty generally known that you are coming back to live at Crick Hollow. Frodo sat for a while and thought. I've made up my mind, he said finally. I'm starting tomorrow, as soon as it is light, but I'm not going by road. It would be safer to wait here than that. If I go through the north gate, my departure from Buckland will be known at once, instead of being secret for several days at least, as it might be. And what is more, the bridge in the east road near the borders will certainly be watched, whether any Black Rider gets into Buckland or not. We don't know how many there are, but there are at least two, and possibly more. The only thing to do is to go off in a quite unexpected direction. But that can only mean going into the old forest, said Fredgar, horrified. You can't be thinking of doing that. It's quite dangerous as Black Riders. Not quite, said Mary. It sounds very desperate, but I believe Frodo is right. It is the only way of getting off without being followed at once. With luck, we might get a considerable start, but you won't have any luck in the old forest, objected Fredgar. No one no one ever has luck in there. You'll get lost. People don't go in there. Oh, yes, they do, said Mary. The Brandybucks go in, occasionally when the fit takes them. We have a private entrance. Frodo went in once, long ago. I've been in several times, usually in daylight, of course, when the trees are sleepy and fairly quiet. Well, do as you think best, said Fredgar, and I'm more afraid of the old forest than anything I know about. The stories about it are a nightmare, but my vote hardly counts, as I'm not going on the journey. Still, I'm very glad someone is stopping behind who can tell Gandalf what you've done when he turns up, as I'm sure he will before long. I think with that, we shall call it a night. If you listened at home, thanks very much for joining in. Join us next week when we do have the Balderdash campaign. That will be the 9th, Sunday the 9th of August. And yeah, if you haven't already liked, please do like the video. If you haven't already subscribed, also do that. And we shall see you next time.